Thank you, Tyler. And thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Dean Rutherford. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you to Nikolai for arranging this event. My first time here was 2 years ago. I came with my husband-to-be, Jonathan Martin, who is a reporter with Politico, and he spoke. And we got married last year, and this being the birthplace of two for the price of one, I am here now. So thank you again for having me. I spend my weekends and my weeks thinking of questions, so I am most eager to hear your questions for me, but I wanted to give you a little bit of background about the history of Meet the Press, and then I have a little, me being a television producer, a little TV clip to show you as well that kind of gives an overview of our 65 years, almost 66 years. The show actually started on radio in 1945, and it was created by Lawrence Spivak, who at the time was an editor and publisher of a magazine called American Mercury magazine. And he was trying to think of ways to increase his subscriptions to the magazine. So he thought, what a better way than create a radio show? And Martha Roundtree, who at the time was hosting a radio show called Leave It to the Girls, which I like to think of as maybe the early version of The View. She came on board with him, and they decided to pitch this unique concept, which they pitched as sort of a press conference of the air to the executives at Mutual Radio. And Martha Roundtree, who was a force in and of herself, gave the pitch to the radio executives and said, we want to come up with a program. We can get guests like Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt on the program. And they thought, well, okay, green light, go. And Spivak, after the pitch meeting, said, well, we can't get those people. What are you talking about? She said, I said, like Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt. So she was a good producer from the beginning. She was actually once called by someone a diesel engine under a lace handkerchief. So that gives you a little picture of her. And I think you'll see a little bit of her in some of these clips. And anyway, the program started in 1945 and then debuted 2 years later on television in 1947, where the first guest was James Farley, who was the Postmaster General. And then it moved to Sunday mornings in 1965, so it really was not an original Sunday morning show. That concept had not come into time yet, and it aired on television in Thursday nights in prime time. And there was a panel of reporters, as some of you might have remembered over the years watching the show, who asked questions to the newsmaker guests. And really, the mission of the program, according to Lawrence Spivak way back then, and it's something that holds true today, is to learn as much about the guest as you can and take the other side. And that's what we try to do every week on the program. Play the devil's advocate, if you will. Tim Russert, who was the moderator for many, many years, he always said, if you can't answer tough questions, you can't make tough decisions. So that's something that we try every week to hold people accountable, to ask the tough questions, but do it in a civilized and respectful manner so that you, the viewers, can understand more about the issues that are going on in the world. So with that, I want to show you a couple-minute clips, and then I'll tell you some stories behind the scenes and take...
News in Washington. This is Meet the Press with David Gregory.
There are very few things in life that are permanent, particularly in television, but Meet the Press has been a constant. The longest-running program in television history.
I'm one of those persons that doesn't believe that a political party ought to just be a rallying ground for anybody that wants to get under the tent. I'm of the opinion that a political party ought to stand for something.
We may have to use lumberjack tactics, bare-knuckle tactics. If those are the only kind of tactics the communists understand, then those are the tactics we'll use.
Do you think we shall ever have a woman president?
Yes, of course we will.
People all across the country can take some time each Sunday morning, sit down with their families, have a cup of coffee, and learn quite a bit about their leaders and their government.
We have a situation now with Cuba where Mr. Khrushchev is threatening if we take any action. We don't know exactly what action would bring about this rain of rockets.
Mr. Nixon has...
We almost went to black in the show. We had an interview with Colin Powell in 2004, and It was an interview where he was doing several Sunday morning shows at pre-taping at one time. He was over in Jordan, and we had each been, the shows had been allotted 10 minutes for an interview with the secretary. And we had come in, he was traveling overseas, so we had come in to the studio to do the interview. I think it was like 2 or 3 in the morning. And he was running a little late. We were late getting started. We were like second or third up in the rotation of the different Sunday morning shows. And we had, as we usually like to do, go a little bit over time. We had been given a strict amount of time of 10 minutes for an interview. Of course, there was a ton of news going on. You know, we're at war. And so we kind of felt like 10 minutes really, we needed a little bit more than that. So at about the 12-minute mark, Tim Russert was doing the interview. And we start, you know, I'm on the phone with the producer that's on the ground, and we're starting getting, they're telling us to wrap, they're telling us to wrap. And so Tim said to Colin Powell, Secretary Powell, my last question to you. And at that point, you see the camera, who is nicely focused on Secretary Powell, pan over to a bank of palm trees in Jordan. And Tim sees the camera monitor do that, and he's like, well, what's going on? And the person on the ground said, well, his staffer, Emily Miller, has moved the camera. And so I got in Tim's ear, and I said, Emily Miller's moved the camera. And Tim says, Secretary, I understand a member of your staff has moved the camera. That's highly inappropriate. And Colin says, oh, gee, I'm sorry, Tim. Emily, get out of the way. Move the camera back. And so the camera then moves back to Secretary Powell, and he says, go ahead, Tim, ask your final question. And so that was all broadcast on the air that Sunday morning. So that was the time we almost went to black. And then we had General Powell back to the program a couple months later. He was a good sport about the whole thing. And I had ordered this blow-up palm tree online, and we gave it to him at the end of the show, and so this was our annual palm tree award that we were presenting to the secretary. And what he did that morning was actually something that we coined on Sunday morning. It's called the full Ginsburg. He was doing all 5 Sunday morning television shows. And up until 1998, William Ginsburg was the lawyer for Monica Lewinsky. And he was the first person to ever accomplish this feat of appearing on all 5 Sunday morning talk shows at one time. He pre-taped a couple that morning, and so ever since then, whenever someone does all 5 Sunday shows, we call it the full Ginsburg in William Ginsburg's honor. Any luck there? Okay. You have to reboot it? Okay. And speaking of sort of getting guests, the big gets, what we try to do every week is get the biggest guest on the biggest topic. And what's mindful in our coming up with the guests and the topics is how do we take an issue that that it's going on in the news, but that needs to be more developed, and sort of take that story and move it forward. So a lot of people ask me, how do you come up with the guests that you have on a Sunday morning? And it's really kind of a juggling act during the week. We sort of bat different ideas back and forth. We have five Sunday morning television shows, so that's a competitive environment. So we try to think of people, early in the week that are going to be relevant and drive that agenda through the week. But we try to do that in mindful eye of that there's other shows gambling for the same people. So a lot of that is figuring out who's available, when can they do the program, and making that decision usually by Wednesday or Thursday of that week in terms of who we're going to talk to and how we're going to take an issue and develop it further. This past Sunday, we had on Mayor Bloomberg and Wayne LaPierre to do a debate on gun control. And then we also did a look ahead on the gay marriage debate. So that was an example of 2 issues that we felt needed some more dialogue. And we were able to kind of dissect those issues and give some perspective to the week. So that's what goes through our mind. It's not a scientific process. Sometimes we try to book guests a couple of weeks ahead of time if we know it's a major guest that we're very interested in, but for the most part, it's really week to week. We don't like to be in a situation where we have to cancel somebody on a Friday. I have always found that that comes back to bite you later on. So nobody likes to be traded for another guest. That being said, though, sometimes there's breaking news and you have to change the show. We've had situations, 2 years ago, on a Saturday, when Congresswoman Gabby Giffords was shot, that was a Saturday afternoon at noon. So by that next Sunday morning, the next day we had a whole new show planned, and we just rebooked it. Saddam Hussein was captured on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m., so that was fun. Putting a whole new show together by 9 a.m., calling senators, waking them up, have you heard the news, can you make your way into our studio? So a lot of that is kind of just juggling and figuring out what makes sense.
Standard has been restored in government.
Neither I nor the American people would support the sending of an American team to Moscow with Soviet invasion troops in Afghanistan.
I don't have an ideology. I think ideology is a scare word.
I do not approve of arms for hostages.
I don't think there's ever been a president of either party and any philosophy that didn't think that he should have gotten a better press.
A war of choice or a war of necessity. It's a war of necessity.
We have an obligation in Washington as leaders to make sure that we are sending a strong message that we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Part of understanding what's going on here at home means understanding what's going on globally. Dictators, prime ministers, and kings, Meet the Press is a real window on the world.
I am not communist. I am not agree with communism.
We do not recognize the communist regime on the mainland. We consider them bandits.
A strong Israel is not only the best guarantee for peace, but is the best incentive for peace.
My aim and the aim of my organization and the aim of my people is to establish our democratic Palestinian states where Jews, Christians, and Muslims can live in equality and friendship.
As far as we are concerned, we are not the toys of any country, including the United States.
If peace is achieved, if there is progress towards it in my lifetime, it will be the crowning achievement of my life.
The attack on America was an attack on us too, because we stand for the same things.
Civilian casualties are undermining support in the Afghan people for the war on terrorism and for the relations with America. How can you expect the people who keep losing their children to remain friendly?
Debates, investigations, partisanship. Politics is a pretty tough game with some tough players, and they aren't shy about making their positions known.
I wonder whether or not you would enjoy being investigated for the pure sense of power to investigate.
There's going to be a war.
A war between whom?
Between the Friends of the President and the Independent Council. That's exactly who it's between.
It's inconceivable to me that this president would deliberately refuse to negotiate and deliberately prefer to just have the whole system break down.
The administration said nuclear weapons tie in Al-Qaeda. That's the distortion, that's the misrepresentation, that's the lie.
That's the biggest ripoff. I mean, that is against the law to buy a vote.
The bread and butter of Meet the Press is politics, of course, but we're also here to talk about social change, religion, and the welfare of individuals around the globe.
We have a great deal of church going in America, but we're not relating this church going to our personal daily lives.
I do feel that if we are to be truly Americans and citizens of this nation, then we must not have any barriers standing before us on the basis of race.
And you can't do anything about a family life if men don't have jobs, if children don't have good schools, if people live in ghettos.
What kind of choice is it, after all, to be able to go out and earn half as much as a man for doing the very same work?
When the parents are there every day, they have a much more influence on that kid than what we do.
There's a tsunami happening every month in Africa, but it's an avoidable catastrophe.
Health brings the population growth down, which is counterintuitive. It sets a country up, whether it's to educate their people or sustain the environment in a very positive way.
Meet the Press has a unique role in American society, a vital role in democracy, in wartime, peacetime, and times of national uncertainty.
That attack in Korea
but we were pledged to the establishment of a free and independent Korea. And we responded, and the whole American people was for it.
This war can be ended, and it should be ended now.
Everything that I did during the war was to try to bring it to a close.
It's never been the American policy to go after a single individual or try to kill anyone.
We thought it was an accident, a strange accident, and then on the drive to Capitol Hill, we heard about the second plane, so then we knew, of course, it was a terrorist attack.
And I remember stopping. I didn't have a lot of time to stop and think. I just remember just saying to myself, this is something much worse than we've ever experienced before.
I don't think it's likely to unfold that way, Tim, because I really do believe we will be greeted as liberators.
The war in Afghanistan, unfortunately, was lost in the fog of the war in Iraq.
I believe I've got to be aggressive, but I also have to be civil and foster a sense of constructive engagement. If I can always remember that, I will have fulfilled my role of moderator, the proud tradition of Martha Roundtree, Larry Spivak, and Tim Russell. More than 6 decades of Meet the Press.
Martha Roundtree, moderator of Meet the Press.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session of Meet the Press.
This is Ned Brooks inviting you to Meet the Press.
I'm Lawrence Spivak, and this is Meet the Press.
This is Bill Monroe inviting you to Meet the Press.
Good day, I am Marvin Kell.
I'm Roger Mudd.
And that's Meet the Press for this Sunday. I'm Chris Wallace.
I'm Garrett Utley. I hope you'll join us again next week for Sunday Today and Meet the Press.
I'm Tim Russert. That's all for today.
I'm David Gregory. We'll be back next week. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
The past 65 years, which I think can give you a sense of what we try to do every week. Some of the ways we try to elicit those headlines in the interview process, we use a lot of graphics and elements in the program. We found, when I first started at Meet the Press with Tim as the researcher, we started pioneering this aspect of using graphics on the screen. So we would get tired of asking a senator, well, you said this, in 1988, and the senator would say, no, I didn't say that. And Tim would say, yes, you did. No, you didn't. Yes, you did. No, you didn't. And this would go on for several minutes. And so we kind of came up with the concept of let's put the quote on the screen with the date and when you said it and get past all of the, yes, you said it, no, you didn't. So that's something that we really started doing, in the early 90s, which has now been replicated a lot in other television interview shows, but we found it to be an effective way. Another thing we do a lot is use a lot of tape back with people. Remember, we had a series of interviews with then candidate or Senator Obama over the years. We did an interview with him in 2004 and asked about when he was running for the Senate if he would pledge to serve out his full 6-year term. Of course, he said yes, he would. And then we had him back in 2006 and we asked him, would he run for president? No, he would not. And then we had him back on at the end of 2006, and what we did was we played those 2 clips. And this was at the point where it was clear that he was thinking about running, and he had just published his book. And confronted with those 2 clips, and Tim asked him, "Has your thinking evolved on this?" And he said, well, yes, it has. And that made a lot of headlines. But if it wasn't for those 2 clips that we had, we would not have been able to sort of elicit that candid response from him and make those headlines. I get asked a lot, have you ever had guests that have canceled or not shown up on a Sunday morning? Yes, we have. Most memorable during my time there was a Sunday where we had Prince Bandar, who was the ambassador to the United States from Saudi Arabia. Did not do a lot of television interviews, sort of a big booking that we worked a lot on getting. It was right after the war started in Iraq, and Afghanistan. So it was a big time in the news. We had promoted the heck out of the interview all week long, Prince Bandar exclusive on Meet the Press. And Saturday night at 3 in the morning, my phone rings at home, which is never a good sign. And it was the embassy, and they said, we're very sorry, but Prince Bandar cannot fulfill his commitment to come on the show tomorrow. And I, blah, 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 you know, tried to talk him out of it. Is there anything you can do? No, it was clear he was not coming. And so I said, well, will you please give us somebody from the embassy? We have, you know, he's our main guest on the program. This wasn't like someone canceling who was on the panel that you could easily, he was our main guy. So they said, okay, well, we can give you Adel Al-Jubair, who at the time was the advisor to the Crown Prince at the embassy. So poor Adel Al-Jubair comes on the program the next morning. And Tim, when I woke him up to tell him this, was livid, upset that this had happened, and insisted on keeping our taped open of the show the same, where we say this Sunday morning, our issues this Sunday, an exclusive interview with Prince Bandar, and he kept that all in the open, and then comes up live and says, but first, late last night, an embassy official called and canceled the interview with Prince Bandar, and here in his place is the foreign policy advisor to the Crown Prince, Mr. Adel Al-Jubair. Mr. Adel Al-Jubair, welcome to Meet the Press. Where is the prince? Sort of went downhill from there. Is it true that the prince has a history of erratic behavior? Is the prince on medication? Yeah, so that was not good. We had a couple other instances, but nothing to that extent where it was our main guest canceling. So those sort of things happen. We, you know, try to make sure that everything is in place. Daylight savings time is always a morning that I do not look forward to, reminding everyone to set their clocks, that they show up. Poor Senator Dole one time in the fall showed up an hour early for the show, so he had to sit in the lobby for a while. But speaking of Senator Dole, I get asked a lot about debates on the program and this era of civility and having both sides come on the show together, which doesn't happen all that often anymore, unfortunately. When I first started at the program, we used to have Senator Dole and Senator Mitchell, the minority and majority leader of the Senate, on quite frequently, like every month or two. And when was the last time you saw a joint interview these days with the Senate majority and minority leader? You just don't. So that has changed a lot over the years. Another thing that's changed in terms of what we do with putting the show together and thinking in terms of the research is a lot. When I started with the show, research wasn't easily accessible. I was clipping newspapers. I had a filing system in my office. There was no jumping on the Google. I'm dating myself here. There was no Google. There was no internet. So my job was really to clip newspapers, have a filing system, know my guy at the Bureau of Labor Statistics to call when I needed an unemployment figure. All of that information was what I worked on during the week. These days, there's so much information out there that really what we try to do every week is just distill it, to go through it as best we can and then figure out what we can give you as the most important aspects of that. So that's a way. I mean, I remember, you know, when we would have, for instance, Governor Clinton on the show, I would call the Little Rock affiliate and ask what was in the newspaper that morning. Did you have an article you can fax over to us for that Sunday morning? So a lot has changed in how we think and put together the show. Another part of what we do, and I think it's fitting here that we're at the School of Public Service, is, and Tim Russert really, and this is something I learned a lot from him, is we really do think of government service as public service and giving back. And I think we have a very healthy respect for people that are willing to come on the program and to share their views. And even, you know, as I talked about putting up graphics of what you've said and if you've changed your opinion, there's nothing wrong with changing your opinion. I mean, we've seen just over the last few weeks in terms of people changing their opinion on the issue of gay marriage. As long as you have a rationale for it and you're willing to stand up and explain it, I think that goes a long way. So with that, I would love to take your questions. Anything good, bad, complaints about the show, anything, I'm here. Yeah.
Last year, New York Times, hold on, wait a second. Hold on, let's get the microphone. Hold on, let's get the mic.
Thank you. Last year, the New York Times and other news organizations acknowledged that they had been acquiescing to certain politicians and campaigns for something called quote approval, to where they would not print something from a spokesperson or a politician until it had been approved by that source.
Right.
Has your show ever faced this? If so, how have you responded, and what policies do you have in place?
We have a very easy policy. It's we never take anything off the table when a guest comes on the program. So it's pretty easy to enforce. The answer is no. Now, we have been asked before with guests that want to come on, that are willing to come on, but say, you know, the person will only come on if you do not ask about X, Y, or Z, and the answer is no. We don't do that. So that's pretty easy. Yeah.
Question back here.
One of the criticisms of news Sunday shows is the repeating guest. That, like Newt Gingrich has been on so much, John McCain has been on so much. Now, you talked about your selection of speakers. What do you do to keep that from occurring? Because apparently you don't do a very good job.
Well, I hear you, and Senator McCain is like the record holder on the program as for a number of appearances. It's something that, you know, we think about a lot, I will tell you, and I totally take the criticism. But a lot of times, you know, when we were putting a show together, we're wanting people that are newsmakers and that are able to drive a story and an agenda. So whether that's someone running for president, whether that's a committee chairman, someone in leadership, and there's only a certain amount of those people. We're not the program that's just going to have, you know, miscellaneous people on talking about a topic. That's not what we do. We're going to have newsmakers on, and somebody like Senator McCain, someone like Lindsey Graham that we have on the program frequently, are willing to come on and talk about the issues and make news. So it's really juggling those two factors.
Let me say that we've got Senator McCain coming here on April the 12th. So
he won't be here to watch.
Yeah. All right, let's do a question right here. We'll get to the microphone right here, right in the front row.
I'm a big fan of the show. I'm curious to know, do you believe that there's a shift between David Gregory and Tim Russert? As a fan of the show, I remember the hardline questions that Tim Russert would ask President Obama, some of the other presidential candidates, and it seems to be a little bit of a shift of the amount of questions and the type of questions that are being asked to these presidential candidates, and just the feel of the show overall. Do you see there being a dramatic shift between Tim and David Gregory? Do you feel they're different? I mean, what's your thought? I feel like Tim Russert was a stronger moderator, and I feel like the questions and the answers we were seeking from these newsmakers and these individuals that we're looking to get certain answers from happened when Tim moderated less with David Gregory, in my personal opinion. I feel like he does a good job, but there's a shift between those two.
Well, it's a different style. You know, they're two different people and two different skill sets. Tim was someone who was trained as a lawyer, and his thought process was very different. He would think of an interview as more of an interrogation, to put it mildly, or a cross-examination, if you will. And so it's two different processes. David's background is really in journalism, and that's been his career. And so, you know, he was certainly branded as, you know, the firebrand in the front row of, you know, asking tough questions of the president. I mean, I don't think he asked less tough questions. I think they're just done in a different sort of way that's natural to him. He doesn't try to be Tim Russert, nor would I want him to try to be that, because he's his own person, and that's the way he asks the questions.
How is moderator selected, and is it a professional job for life once they're selected, or do you ever suggest someone retire?
Nothing is ever for life in the television business. Nothing. It's, you know, Meet the Press has had, I think, 9 or 10 moderators over the course of the past 65 years, and people kind of come and go for different reasons, move into different jobs, if you will. I mean, usually, Tim was the moderator for 17 years, which was a record, but usually the moderators had been there, you know, 5, 6 years. Lawrence Spivak was a little different case because he created the program, and then he was the moderator for a while, and then he was something called a regular panelist for many, many, many years until I think 1976 he stepped down. So, you know, nothing is ever forever in the television business, and so people kind of come and go for different reasons. And how they're selected, usually, you know, it's selected by the president of the news division makes the final decision on who's going to have the various roles on all the television programs.
Good question. Yes.
Yeah. Betsy, I'm a huge fan of Meet the Press. I watched it with my dad when I was little.
I now watch it with my husband. So I've noticed that you guys put in additional little things. You have done social media trends. There for a little while you did this tweet tracker, trendy
Trend tracker,
thing.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it was gone. Is that gone permanently, hopefully?
It's not gone permanently. You didn't like it? No, I mean, I'm curious. No. What? Why?
Here's why.
Distracting?
Because
Too much?
Incredibly distracting. I watch your program because I want to hear what David Gregory has to say. I want to hear what the newsmakers have to say. If I want to get tweets, I'll go and do that on my own. I don't really
I don't
care,
like,
and I find it incredibly distracting.
Yeah.
And then when you take valuable time, not being critical, but it sounds like I'm being critical. I'm aware of my
No,
criticism.
this is like a great focus group here.
But without the sandwiches in the mirror.
We pay a lot of money for this elsewhere, so go ahead.
Anyway, but when you come back and then do the 5-minute wrap up to say, you know, this is what the trends are.
Right.
Big Fruit Loop and deal. I don't care.
Well,
I care what the newsmaker people have to say. I don't care what Joe Schmo has to say. You guys may care, and you guys can do that in your wrap-up meeting.
Well, the trend tracker, what we tried to do with that was visually, and I am not a fan of some television programs that have the Twitter feed underneath the guests while they're talking. I find that very distracting. I don't like it. And we have not done that. What we have done is put up, you know, on the, you know, the big monitor that we have, with sort of trending what people are saying, just as a way to really spark conversation more than anything else. And just show sort of what the activity level is. And it's actually a way of engaging people more than telling you what somebody else is. It's a way to sort of, I think, bring the viewer in. I mean, there's a lot of thinking these days in television about two-screen technology, second screens, what they call it, where people are watching television, but they also have a device, a phone, a laptop, while they're watching along with that. I don't know if you guys do that or not. But there is a lot of thinking of how we bring the viewer in and make them a part of the program, so it's not just one-dimensional. So that's some of the thinking that goes into it. I mean, I take your point, but that's just sort of the thinking that goes into why we're trying to do a little bit more interactivity with social media as really a method of engagement.
Yes, sir.
I normally get to watch the show overnight Monday morning because I'm in church, but
I'm a preacher's kid, so I do not object to that.
Okay. But the question I have is, you're talking about Tim Russert and the history of the show. In Tim's book, Big Russ and Me, he talked about the Louisiana governor's race in 1991.
91, yeah.
And how do you feel about the show if it goes to where it may determine an outcome of an election?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of responsibility that goes into what we do every Sunday morning, and that's not lost on us at all. That particular show that you're referring to, I remember well because I'm from New Orleans. We had David Duke and Edwin Edwards on the program, and Tim later would say that was the, you know, he was very aggressive against David Duke, but he joked later that if he was going to be over-aggressive with somebody, it was okay because he was a Nazi. So if that he was going to go over the line and cross the line, that would be okay. But that was a case where Tim was able to ask, David Duke came on the show, and all he wanted to talk about was economic recovery and economic issues in Louisiana. Anytime Tim would ask him a question about his past, he would say, I want to focus on jobs and recovery in Louisiana. And so Tim very plainly asked him, okay, you want to talk about jobs? Tell me who the biggest 3 employers in the state of Louisiana are. No clue. Sort of told you all you needed to know right there.
Question at the back, Katie.
Thank you so much, and welcome back to Little Rock. My
Thank
name is
you.
Katie Milligan, and I'm a second-year student. The argument's been made that with the polarization of 24-hour news cycles, there's been this loss of trust with the audience and, say, an institution like a Cronkite. Do you agree with that, and how does Meet the Press compensate for something like that?
Loss of trust in the institution of the media?
With a moderator or with a specific anchor, and just what they deliver kind of is the truth, and that trust in the news and where the source.
And do I see that doing what?
Do you see that in Meet the Press with your viewers, or do you feel that because of the time that it's been established, the length of time, that it is a trusted source? And if you
well, I hope it's a trusted source. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. But that's what we strive for every week. You know, I mentioned Lauren Spivak and learning as much about, you know, the guest and sort of taking the other side. And I do feel very strongly that it's equal opportunity questioning. We do not have a dog in the fight, and we don't either week. I mean, what we try to do is look at an issue, ask questions that we think people want to know, hold people accountable, and really play devil's advocate to the guest and make them really sort of defend their position and answer the tough questions. So I do feel like sometimes in the cable news 24/7 environment, sometimes things disintegrate into screaming fests back and forth. I really feel like on Sunday morning we try to, you know, present a forum where you don't have a lot of that and where the moderator can really moderate. And that's the moderator's job, is to, if you have a debate, keep the discussion going, keeping things civil, and helping people learn from that.
Betsy, question. Oh, go ahead. There's a couple more back here. Here we go, right here.
By your own observation, we don't have very many opportunities to have this very polarized world brought together. Is that because the two sides, you can't bring them together, or you choose not to?
I think it's because sometimes the both sides don't want to come together to do sort of substantive discussions on the issues. A lot of times when we're booking guests, and we run into this very frequently, if we call Senator X only wants to come on by himself, doesn't want to come on with anyone else, or will only come on with Senator Y. And, you know, in those sort of situations, you know, we present the invitation to the person. If we want to do a debate and we call somebody and they don't want to come on with someone else, then they don't come on at all. So we really try not to. I never like to go down the road with a guest where the guest has a say on who will come on with that person. Like cherry picking guests, sometimes we'll have, you know, a senator, they'll say, I'll come on, but I will only come on with this person. Well, we're not going to just put a person on because that person says it will come on with them. We just won't do that segment. We'll do someone else. So a lot of times we run into some of those issues. What you see happening is what we're able to do, pretty much. I mean, you know, we have, you know, that's why I feel, you know, when we're able to do actual debates in a race, we're in a unique opportunity to highlight those. I started a series in 2002, a Senate debate series on the program, where we got leading candidates from the major Senate races on the program to do debates every week. And that's a rare instance because it's a political campaign and the candidates feel that pressure to come on and do debates, that you can take advantage of that. And so we've done a lot of interesting debates over the years with some high-profile candidates, and we're able to get some good dialogue back and forth. And we did a debate with all the Republican candidates in New Hampshire this past year, which was good as well.
Alex, you got your hand up? Yeah.
Again, thank you very much for coming. My name is Alex. I work here at the Clinton School. I was wondering if you could speak to what seems to be kind of the present day model of news, which is much more revenue generating, attention drawing for the benefit of a corporation or for its ownership. Allegedly, you know, there was that time where if a news division wasn't making money, that was okay because they were public servants. They were there to, you know, speak truth to power. They were there to find the truth, and other divisions of the organization could generate revenue to provide that cover. Excuse me. But it seems like today there are news divisions that, you know, we need to make money, we need to get more revenue, you know, we need to change out personnel, we need to bring in a new anchor, we need to change our graphic. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that and where you see if the snowball is going down the hill and this is just going to become a bigger issue as time goes on, and where television media might just become a more difficult thing to draw the larger viewers.
Well, I can't really remember a point where the news divisions would actually want to take a loss. I don't really, I mean, we've always been an enterprise that actually has to pay the bills, and we're not PBS, unfortunately. So there is that sense of, yes, we need people to watch the show. We need people to support the advertisers because that keeps the lights on. So at the end of the day, it's a business. And it's not just a public service, enterprise. So I think that's the world that we live in. I don't think it interferes with what we try to do on the program. We never make decisions based on an advertiser, but at the end of the day, we are judged by the number of people that watch us. That's the metric that advertisers use to whether they decide to sponsor a show or not. So we want to do the program that people are going to want to watch. We are not, just out there to present a public service. We have to have people watch the show. So it's really that balancing act between drawing people in and presenting a good product. And I do believe that as long as we're presenting a product that is good, that is substantive, that hopefully if you build it, they will come and stay, that's in terms of Meet the Press, and that's what I'm here to speak about, is what we try to do every week.
Betsy, today's Tuesday, Sunday show. When will you have you made a decision, not that you can release it, but have you made a decision about Sunday? Or when will you make a decision, and how's that process?
Not yet.
Work?
I'm going to ask my focus group here who we should have.
Okay, we can give a focus group. Anybody got a suggestion on who she should have? That'd be a great, and if it comes up on Sunday, you can say, hey, it came out of this thing. So,
usually by Wednesday or Thursday, we have a pretty good sense. Right now, I have a good sense of what we want to people we want to try to have on the round table. I don't have a good sense of who we're going to have as the lead guest on the show. And this is, Easter Sunday, not a good week for newsmaker guests. Congress is out of session, and there's no, fiscal crisis clock looming in the corner.
Jonathan Martin from Politico.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Question.
How do you make your decisions on who you have on the round table? They're very good, by the way.
Thank you. We really try, for the roundtable, it's our opportunity to really present what I like to think of as kind of diverse opinions and find a mix of people who can engage one another and have a mix in terms of gender and diversity, ideology, age. If we're doing our job, I think every week you try to find that diversity in the program where you can hear different opinions. What we've tried to do over the last few years is mix it up a little bit in terms of having not just a group of 4 reporters, but that we would have a member of Congress, a strategist, and a journalist and an opinion journalist, and kind of get that interaction, make it a little more lively and have more of a discussion. When we're talking about people being able to debate one another, that's a format where I think people feel more comfortable in having that discussion. So that's something that we think about when we're putting together. It's a very, I just was joking that it's not a scientific process, but when it comes down to the round table, a lot of it is that you don't want to have a round table with 4 Republicans on it. You want to have some, diverse opinions.
Let's thank Betsy for being here, and y'all stay around and visit with her.
Thank you.